stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Martha, please call roll.
Davis. Here. Flora.
Here.
Inman.
Here.
Crane.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Rothrock.
Here.
Schlossmacher.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started this evening, I would like to welcome residents and guests to our meeting. There will be opportunities to address council at various times on the agenda. If you are here for something, if you want to talk about something that's not on the agenda, we have item number 5, the opportunity to make public comment. If you do have an item that you want to talk about related to an agenda item, please raise your hand so I can recognize you. This evening, item number 1, public hearing. We do not have any public hearings tonight, so we'll go to item number 2, special presentations. We have several special presentations tonight, and we'll begin with our Parks and Recs Department, Ms. Hummerhouse.
Mayor and Council, I am pleased to introduce Mr. Aaron Cherry, our new Facilities and Maintenance Supervisor. So Aaron is week 2 into the job. He comes to us from the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, where he had worked for over 20 years in various positions. The past 4 years he worked as their facilities manager, where he planned, organized, and directed a variety of capital projects related to the maintenance and repair of both the property and the grounds. He was responsible for, just to name a few items, because I know there was a lot more than this, but the repair of the physical plant system, the HVAC systems, fire protection systems, landscaping, underground storage tanks. Now, we don't have any of those. And snow removal, again, just to name a few of those things. So Aaron does describe himself as an analytical thinker, positive collaborator, and a professional that is committed to accomplishing goals and objectives. So in his spare time, he does like to bicycle. Like he's trying to find someone to do the MS 150 with him, so if we've got any takers. And then he does fish and enjoys volunteer opportunities. So, Aaron, anything you want to add to that?
I cannot add anything to that.
That's everything.
That's everything in a nutshell.
Well, he has hit the ground running, and his head is spinning, and we've got all kinds of things going for him. So, anyway, please feel free to go through and meet the council.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Aaron, good to see you.
Nice seeing you. Nice to see you.
I get to see you again.
Yes. Thank you. You're not running around.
Somebody's running around.
Next on our agenda, the month of July is Parks and Recreation Month, and I would like to present Ms. Hummerhouse and all of our Parks and Rec staff with a proclamation designating July as Parks and Rec Month. In the City of Mission, I want to thank Christy and her staff for all your hard work that you put in every day, so all of us have opportunities and enjoy our community center, enjoy our aquatic center and our parks to help us be happier and healthier community. Presentation on our 2019 budget community dialogue. The council and staff have been working very hard over this last several months preparing the budget that provides the highest level of service with the available resources we have. Ms. Smith will provide an overview of the 2019 recommended budget, and then there will be an opportunity for questions and comments. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased this evening to just present to you some of the highlights of our 2019 recommended budget. I put a copy of tonight's PowerPoint presentation at your place. It's also available on the website, and there were some copies in the lobby. Most of this you've seen before as we've gone through our budget discussions. But this evening, we're going to share more specific information about the 2019 recommended budget, the new programs and services that have been included, our 2019 to 2023 5-year capital improvement program, and what the remaining steps are in our budget process. As you know, we're represented by a mayor and 8 city council members, 2 elected from each of 4 wards, who serve for staggered 4-year terms. And one of the most important jobs of the council each and every year is considering and adopting a budget. In terms of our organization, certainly everything flows out of our residents and business owners in the community through the city council into our operating departments and structure. We do budget in our general fund for 9 particular areas that cover several operating departments. Because of our size, we contract a lot of services out to increase our staff capacity and allow us to tackle many things that other cities of our size are not often able to do. So this organizational chart just provides an overview of those operating departments. Why do we budget? First and foremost, it's best practice. It helps us have a uniform and consistent and well thought out approach to how we spend the resources that have been entrusted to us. It's also required by state statute. So every city in the state of Kansas is on the same fiscal year, so calendar year lines up with fiscal year, and each city must have their budgets adopted by August and certified to their respective counties by August 25th of each year so that the mill levies can be finalized and placed on the tax bills which are distributed. We're also required by state statute to present a balanced budget. So that's something unique at this level of government that doesn't occur in other places. Also, our budget helps us identify community priorities, the revenue and expense mix that we're going to take to support the services and our infrastructure investments. And then it really is a public-facing document that helps to communicate the programs and objectives in any particular year. So how did we get to where we are tonight? We started this process back in May. Often we even start earlier with that, talking about some goals and objectives, but we looked at budget priorities, both from a council perspective and a staff perspective, as the departments put together their 2019 budget requests. At the end of May, we had a community conversation where we had one resident, who I believe is also here with us this evening, so thank you, John, for being back. Where we talked about our budget priorities, challenges, and opportunities, but that information was available online as well. We also did kind of an impromptu, informal public survey this year as a part of that. And we did have 87 responses, which is not bad for that kind of response, and that helped guide us. It lined up, I don't think surprisingly, but it lined up with the council and staff goals and objectives as well. So that helped us form that foundation and know that we were starting off with our base budget in the right place. In June, we looked at our general fund, which is our operating budget, the department's supplemental program requests. We also looked at the capital improvement program, and here we are tonight with our community dialogue on the budget. So this is, up until this point, the budget has been we started with a base budget, we moved into one that was proposed, and now we're looking at a recommended budget. This is the opportunity if the public wants to provide any additional feedback before we finalize the budget for 2019 next month. So just kind of a snapshot of our 2019 recommended budget. The city's overall budget includes 16 separate funds. Some of those are legally required, and some of those just help us provide transparency for accounting and communication purposes. Overall, in 2019, the city's total budget is expected to have $23.8 million in expenditures. Revenues across all 16 of those funds total $22.1 million. Now, what I just said 2 slides ago was that we're required to submit a balanced budget. So you might say to me, why are the revenues less than expenses? Certainly not ideal and not a practice that can be sustained. But we've been able in the 2019 budget to take advantage of excess fund balance to help spur some supplemental programs that we'll cover in more detail. The 2019 budget, as recommended, does not include any tax increases or utility fee increases on the stormwater side. There is a small increase that is being passed through and shared by both the city and the residents in our solid waste utility. It's about a 3.8% increase in solid waste fees. for a total of about $6 annually for our residents. So, and it does address many of the important priorities that we've talked about through the process. Spend a little bit of time in our general fund. The general fund is the largest of the 16 funds, and it is the fund that supports all of our operating departments. In 2019, we are anticipating $13.53 million to come in through general fund revenues, and this chart sort of details the categories and sources of those funds. So property tax and sales tax remain the biggest revenue generators for the city, particularly when you look at that sales and use tax part of the pie at 25% of our annual revenue stream, but in the intergovernmental revenue stream, a large portion of that are pass-through sales taxes that we receive from Johnson County. So we are very heavily sales tax dependent. Property tax at 22%. It's important to note that there's only a portion of that that stays in the general fund. Several years ago, the council we discontinued the transportation utility fee and replaced that with approximately 7 mills to be dedicated for street maintenance. So in the 2019 budget, we're going to transfer a little over $1 million out of what's collected in the general fund into the capital improvement fund for street improvements. We do anticipate being able to maintain the same mill levy for the 2019 budget. In 2018, it was 17.973 mills. That number will fluctuate a little bit at the end of the year as all of the final valuations come in. But we are generally in that same ballpark for 2019. One of the things, and this is our second year putting a budget together under the state-imposed property tax lid. When the county appraiser came to us for their visit in February, they were estimating that we would see an overall increase in our assessed valuation of just under 12%, being driven primarily by increases in residential properties at about 16%. When we got the actual certification and the numbers from the county at the end of June, our actual increase was 13%, so even higher, which doesn't typically happen. And most years we've seen the appraiser come in February a little high, but our actual increase was to about $157 million. It was important as we looked at that, and part of our planning processes was to put that dramatic increase really in some context, because from 2008 to 2013 we actually saw a decline in our assessed valuation. So it was just in 2017 that we were able to recover to 2007 levels. And now we're seeing, so I think as we looked at it before, if we averaged that out, the increase over those years when you're factoring in those things is much more manageable. But we do try to be cognizant of the impact that that has on particularly those in our community who may be on a fixed or limited income. And so since 2004, we have offered a property tax and franchise fee rebate program for those who are income qualified. That's also included in the 2019 budget for our residents to take advantage of. I mean, I think the forever challenge that we talk about in our budget process, tax lid or no tax lid, it's never an easy decision, and it's really how do we balance the cost of delivering what we want and what our residents want with the ability and the tolerance to pay for those things. So it's an ongoing discussion. We'll be in every budget from here until the end of time. In the 2019 budget, in terms of general fund expenses, the general fund reflects $13.8 million in expenses, which does include transfers out to other funds, including the largest one being that $1 million plus for street improvements. In the general fund, we budget really in 4 primary areas: personnel services, contractual services, commodities, which are hard goods, and then capital equipment that is used by our operating departments. Our biggest operating expense, it's no surprise, is personnel. It's about 60% of the recommended 2019 budget. It takes people to do the jobs that we do every day. If you look at the pie chart, public safety, which includes police department and municipal court, has 36% of the 2019 recommended general fund expenses. Public Works, which includes the Public Works Department, Community Development, and Neighborhood Services, comes in at about 30%. Parks and Recreation, which includes the Community Center and the Outdoor Aquatic Center, at 22%. And Administration, which is the legislative budget, council's budget, the administration budget, and our general overhead budget, comes in at about 12%. We have included 70 full-time positions in the recommended 2019 budget. That's an increase of 2 over 2018, and that is due to the addition of community service officers in the police department. The other thing that's not noted here, it is in the budget documents included in your packet, is that we really have made great progress in rebuilding our rainy day fund or our general fund balance. The council has a policy of maintaining a 25% of annual revenues in the general fund as a fund balance. We have not only met that and restricted that in the 2019 budget, but we still are looking at about $1 million in excess fund balance that could be available for other projects that may be identified. Just kind of a quick breakdown of comparison of 2019 budget to 2018 budget in those categories that I just mentioned. Green bar is the 2019 budget, blue bar is 2018. The top line is personnel. You can see that's the largest increase budget to budget, and that is a reflection of not only the addition of those 2 full-time CSO positions, but also in the 2018 budget we had inadvertently dropped out a budgeted public works position. And as we were going through our reviews, so we've added that position back in. So that's what attributes the growth in personnel services, along with anticipated increases in health insurance and other employee benefits. The contractual expenses are being driven primarily by an increase in plan review and inspection costs, resulting from the large development projects that we've got going on in the city, as well as the inclusion of funds to undertake a comprehensive update of our city's comprehensive plan. It's not been done at any level of detail since 2007. We tried to do it in-house in 2015 and didn't really get the legs underneath it that we needed to with some staff changes. So we're looking forward to going through that visioning and update process in 2019. Commodities, you can see a very slight increase. Really, that's just due to increases in the cost of the goods that we're purchasing, fuel and supplies. Debt service, the only debt service that we pay out of the general fund is on the acquisition of our streetlight system. So that's being paid off each year. So you see the green bar decreasing from year to year, and then the transfers out. There's a slight increase, again, attributed to that assessed valuation increase and the increase of money going out for street programs. So each year we ask the departments to look at the feedback that they're getting, their needs, and they submit requests both for capital equipment, which could be vehicles, computer equipment, software, other kinds of things, and then any supplemental programs, personnel services. So when we look at this, we actually, as we put the 2019 budget together, we've got some recommendations that are adjustments to the 2018 budget, as well as things to look forward to in 2019. So in 2019, we were able to fund all of the department's highest priority capital equipment requests for a total of about $684,000. That includes replacement of the radio system for the police department, which is a federally mandated change, and replaces 3 trucks in the public works department used for snow plowing, street maintenance, other types of activities that are 2006 models. One of the things that we haven't included is we've been trying to build an equipment reserve and replacement fund. We don't have a direct transfer into that fund in the 2019 budget because of the size of some of the capital purchases that are required, but we will continue to build that fund. We're also not drawing down from that fund in 2019, and we will continue to deposit the proceeds from any sale of the fixed assets to continue to build that. Supplemental programs, as I mentioned, impact both the current year and the 2019 budget. And they include a vehicle for a building official position that we're currently recruiting for, an ADA and space needs analysis to look at City Hall and the police department, bringing the community service officers in-house in the police department, and as a part of that, offering animal control services to 5 other cities in Northeast Johnson County who were formerly or currently make up the Northeast Animal Control Commission. Of the expenses, $217,000 in expenses, we expect to recover about $61,000, $62,000 from the other cities in contractual fees for that. In 2019, we'll be looking at an update to our Direction Finder survey. We've done that on a 4-year schedule, so the last time we did a Direction Finder update was 2015, and so 2019 we're on schedule. It also lines up nicely and is an important piece of our comprehensive plan update. Also in the Parks and Recreation Department, we're looking at adding Parks and Recreation marketing services and a part-time fitness coordinator, both intended to help increase revenues and drive some additional programming at the facility. So as we go through the budget process each year, we look at that general operating fund, and then we really look at a series of funds that make up our five-year capital improvement program. So capital infrastructure projects, often much larger in scale and scope, and are designed and constructed over multiple years. So they're best handled outside of your annual operating fund. We have 3 program areas in the current capital improvement program: streets, the capital improvement fund, the street sales tax fund, and our special highway fund feed and reflect the expenditures related to streets. On the stormwater side, our stormwater utility fund, the capital improvement fund, the Rock Creek Drainage District funds, and then special assessments provide funding to support that. And in Parks and Recreation, it's a Parks and Recreation sales tax along with a special Parks and Recreation fund. So we do look at a 5-year CIP. The first year of the CIP, the 2019 year, is formally adopted and incorporated into the 2019 budget document in those funds. But having that available on a 5-year basis also helps us communicate with other partners, whether that be utilities or neighboring cities, as we coordinate our capital projects. Revenue highlights for 2019 in those program areas. On the stormwater side, we use a stormwater utility fee to fund capital projects and debt service. Single-family household pays $336 a year. That's the same as the 2018 rate. Commercial properties pay based on the total amount of impervious surface, and it's an equivalent residential unit multiplier. It gets a little complicated, but that generates about $2.5 million a year. The other piece that comes into that is the collection of a special assessment on the Gateway project to the tune of about $600,000 a year. On the street revenue side, so annual revenues in 2019 on the stormwater side are projected at $3.2 million. Street revenues, as I mentioned, comes from our portion of the state gas tax that's distributed back to us, quarter-cent retail sales tax, and the 7 mills assessed for street repair and maintenance. So revenues, local revenues to support the street program are about $1.87 million. We use those dollars to leverage state, federal, and county grant dollars to help us in many of our larger construction projects. On the Parks and Recreation side, we have a 3/8 retail sales tax and 1/3 of the alcohol tax that's distributed back from the state. We're looking at annual revenues of about $950,000 for 2019 on the Parks and Recreation side. So we take those revenues, and the projects that will be highlighted or undertaken in 2019 on the stormwater side, we'll be looking at design of the channel improvements from Roland Drive to just east of Knoll. It's a SMAC project, and although the SMAC funding, we were not high enough up on the list, we learned at the end of June to receive the SMAC funding for 2019. We will look to, the project is on the list and will remain on the SMAC list, and so we will look at moving into design. So we're prepared to take advantage of those funds. We've also increased pretty substantially our repair and maintenance fund. We've been budgeting about $50,000 a year to deal with sinkholes or other problems that popped up over the course of the year. We've increased that to about $250,000 in the 2019 budget, which will position us. We know there are things out there, just age and condition, and this will allow us to respond to those more effectively. And then stormwater debt service. The gateway taxes have been brought current, which will bring somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1.6 million into the stormwater fund effective. We haven't received the distribution yet from the county, but the county has received that payment. So that will allow us to have some conversations around stormwater projects that we haven't been able to have for the last couple of years. On the street side, we use those funds to support the annual street maintenance program. We'll be looking at reconstruction of Broadmoor from Artway to Johnson Drive. That will be a CARS project, so 50% of the construction and construction inspection will be paid for by the county. We'll be looking at design of Fox Ridge Phase 2, which goes from 51st Street around to the Lamar intersection. Street debt service, and then just miscellaneous repair, sidewalk, and striping. Parks and Recreation side, we're anticipating pursuing some grant funds to replace the play structure in Waterworks Park. Got some major repairs to the pool pack, which is the system at the community center which maintains the temperature and humidity in the indoor pool area. Roof repairs, debt service on the outdoor aquatic facility, and then just other miscellaneous maintenance and equipment for the community center. I did want to touch just briefly, although we don't, there's not a specific budget for these, but because we have seen activity on both of our large development projects here in the last week, there are a lot of things coming in the next several years which we think will have really positive influences on our budget. So the Mission Trails Development Project, demolition started last week, is well underway. We're looking at, it's a $41 million project developed by EPC Real Estate Group. The city is participating with about $10.2 million in TIF and CID. We'll bring 200 market rate apartments to the Johnson Drive corridor along with clubhouse and amenities to support that. We'll also include a parking structure and 52 public parking spaces that can be used for businesses and or events at our community center. We also are looking at and anticipating start of construction before the end of the year on the Gateway development. That's a $214 million mixed-use project, $36.6 million incentive package, or about 17% of the total project budget. As I mentioned, the tax bill has been brought current. We have not yet issued a building permit. There is construction equipment on site. They are locating making sure they know where the piers are that were put in several years ago as a part of the stormwater project. So we have not yet issued the building permit, but I think we're seeing some real forward progress on that project as well. In addition to the general fund and the funds that support our capital improvement program, there are a few other funds that we budget that I wanted to just cover a few highlights. So we have the Mission Convention and Visitors Bureau, or MCVB fund, that's required to account for the revenues off of our transient guest tax. We have a 9% transient guest tax that's levied on hotel motel stays. Right now that is just the Wood Spring Suites along the I-35 corridor with the addition of the 2 hotels in the Gateway. We would anticipate that those revenues would go up in the future. Currently, all the receipts that are generated by the transient guest tax support the Mission magazine. We also use the MCBB fund as a pass-through for expenses related to our holiday adoption program, and we sort of maintain the funds for the Mission Business Partnership. So they bring us their deposits, their sponsorship dollars, and then after their board approves requests, they submit those to us and we process those payments through that fund. The Special Alcohol Fund is the other third. So alcohol funds that are distributed by the state for cities our size are designated to go a third to the general fund, a third special parks and recreation, and a third to a special alcohol fund, which must be used to support drug and alcohol counseling services and programs. So we anticipate about $75,000 in revenues for 2019, $40,000 of which we would recommend going to United Community Services Drug and Alcoholism Council, who administers a grant program and manages the distribution of those funds. $15,000 we would keep in-house in support of the DARE programs that we continue to provide in our local elementary schools, and then $15,000 to support the mental health co-responder program that we do in partnership with Johnson County and several of the other surrounding communities in Northeast Johnson County. Solid Waste Utility Fund is the fund where we reflect our residential trash, recycling, yard waste, and bulky item collection contract. As I mentioned, we're looking at about a 3.86% rate increase for 2019. Our contract with Waste Management will expire at the end of 2019, so we will be going out for a request for proposals on residential trash service, probably mid-year on that project. So currently that solid waste utility fee for single-family properties, residents pay 86% of that. The city pays 14% of the subsidy from the general fund. And then the budget does include TIF and CID funds, and those are separate funds that we established to account for the incentives and the things that are approved on various projects. The The distributions are controlled by the existing redevelopment agreements, and currently we reflect two funds in this budget: Mission Crossing, which is where the Wellstone project is at Martway and Broadmoor, and then Cornerstone Commons, which is the Natural Grocer project. I would anticipate as the EPC development and the Gateway development come online, we'll be adding funds, similar funds, to reflect the activity there. So what do we have left to do? So state statutes also requires us to publish notice and hold a formal budget hearing, which we have done, and that notice has been published for our August 1st Finance and Administration Committee meeting at 6:30 p.m. So we will conduct our formal hearing then. Then on August 15th, we'll present you with a budget resolution, a CIP resolution, and the recommended budget with any changes that are requested between now and then for your consideration and adoption. And then that will allow us to certify not only our expenses and our proposed mill levy to the county, but we also have to certify the stormwater utility rates, solid waste utility rates, and any other special assessments on a parcel by parcel basis. So, how can folks stay connected through us? A variety of ways. Public meetings, online, you can always watch the council meetings, email, social media. So just encourage people to stay involved. There's going to be lots of opportunity for public engagement on a number of topics the rest of this year and into 2019. So with that, that concludes. We're pleased to present the 2019 budget, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
As we move forward with the two major developments that are coming, in the next year and a half to two, when construction time comes to a head, I'd really kind of like to revisit where we are on enough buildings.
Yep.
If you're adding that many people and that many entities, we really need to look at where we are, because it takes, what, Ben, 6 months to a year to get somebody on board?
It takes a year if they're not certified. But that's something that Laura and I discussed for 2020.
Yeah, we don't expect really any of those to be online until the 2020 budget, at least probably closer to 2021. So we've got the opportunity to really look at, and part of that's part of what's driving this space needs analysis. We want to make sure, as we consider what our needs may be from a staffing standpoint, do we have the capacity to accommodate that in this building, because we know we have some challenges.
Just to get some clarification on the contractual, increase in contractual budget, some of that is recouped by the developer.
Yeah, that's correct. So the developer, the plan review and inspection fees, most if not all, are recovered through fees that are paid by. So there's an increase. When you look at the revenue detail in the 2019 budget, you see an increase in that specific line item of revenue, and it has that corresponding increase on the expenditure side. So that will fluctuate. So I think the two things on the contractual services, the plan review and inspection fees, and the comprehensive plan update, will potentially drop back to lower levels in 2020.
Go ahead.
The 1.7 million difference between our expenditures and our revenues, are those reflected in the capital and supplemental programs and services? I'm sorry if I missed where that 1.7 went.
Yes. So a lot of that we're heavy capital equipment. So we went in the 2018 budget, I think we only had about $154,000 versus the $684 that we're looking for. So we are sort of drawing into that fund balance to replace that capital. So that's probably the biggest driver. There is some of that that's associated with the addition of the two positions in the police department.
Just out of curiosity here, we adopt the budget on August 15th, and then it's budget is certified to Johnson County. What's involved in that? Who certified it? Is that something you and the mayor?
No, Brian, and
You all certify.
but you all certify it. Remember, you sign
When we adopt it, that is...
That's when you certify.
I'm up there frantically sending around that sheet for you all to
Yes.
sign. You're
Yeah.
certifying it.
So this, the state prescribes the budget forms, and so there's a certificate that you all sign that basically attests to the fact that you've adopted and approved that budget. And so those state budget forms, along with the information on the special assessments, parcel by parcel. So we have to look at any parcels that may have a change in size when it relates to stormwater utility fee or a variety of different things, and then solid waste is fairly straightforward. And I am remiss in thanking Brian Scott, our Assistant City Administrator and Finance Director, for the many, many hours that he and Debbie Long have put in on this, along with all of our department directors. I think everybody approaches their budget very conservatively and very respectfully, and I appreciate that hard work. It pays off in the end.
We appreciate you too.
Any other questions from council? And any member of the public have a question or a comment about the budget? This will be the time to do that. Yes, Mr. Bruce, would you come up, state your name and address, please?
Frank Bruce, 5706 Lamar, and I apologize if maybe this was covered because the air handler makes a lot of noise. I'm sorry to hear back there. Laura, I presume the 11% in personnel is primarily salary increases and medical insurance costs?
It's a 20% increase, yeah. We budgeted a 20% increase in health insurance costs, which may come down. We won't get our renewal until mid to late October for that. It's primarily being driven by the addition of 2 full-time positions in the police department for community service officers, and as well as picking back up and reflecting fully a position that has been budgeted in public works for many years.
Okay, well my question really revolves to the second item, which is contractual, and that's a 24% increase on a big budget item. What drives that big increase?
So it's paying for the plan review and construction inspection that will take place on the EPC project on Johnson Drive and the Gateway project. Those are offset by revenues that are coming in that the developers pay. So there's a corresponding revenue offset on the contractual side. The other big driver is money that's set aside for an update of the comprehensive plan. And that's a one-time expenditure. I mean, we don't do it, that will not be ongoing in next year's budget. So we need to do it more frequently than what we have in the past, but it will not be part of every annual budget.
But it will be offset.
The plan review and inspection expenses are, the comprehensive plan update is not offset by revenues.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else have a question or comment? All right, seeing none.
Good evening, John Arnett, 6326 Outlook Drive. Just some comments. I'm very pleased with the way the budget has turned out, if you will. I appreciate all the work and effort that everyone has put forth, including the department heads and you all in the thoughtful process of putting the budget together, and the amount of time that you all, including the department heads, put forth in putting together the numbers, if you will. I think I'm pleased to know that the mill levy more or less stays the same. I understand it takes money to get things done. I'm happy to know that it's maintaining essentially the same with the valuation, the appraisal increases. We'll see some additional revenue probably, but I'm pleased that the mill levy will remain the same, again, knowing that it takes money to do things. 3 projects that I think are just as generally speaking, are well appreciated and be well received by everyone is the Broadmoor Street reconstruction that's planned. That's going to be very, very well received. It's going to be a big project. I'll be interested to see just at the final design, how the final design works out, including the sidewalks, the stormwater improvement from Roland Drive to Null is a very important, that's a very important safety aspect for not only those that live along there, but for citizens overall. And then the improvements forecast or projected for Sylvester Powell Community Center, those such a well-used facility that those improvements will be well received. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 3, which is issuance of notes and bonds. And we do not have any notes and bonds on our agenda this evening. Moving on to item number 4, consent agenda. Our consent agenda has 4 items tonight, and if any council member or member of the public would like an item removed from the consent agenda, this is the time to make that request. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor, I move the city council adopt the consent agenda as printed, items 4A through 4D.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call for a vote.
Davis.
Aye.
Schlesmacher.
Aye.
Flora.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Inman.
Aye.
Kring.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item 5 is public comments. This is what I was talking about earlier. It's an opportunity for a member of the public to comment on any item that's not on an agenda this evening. So if you have something you want to talk about this evening, please come forward, state your name and your address for the record. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6. Action items. Tonight we have 2 action items from our Planning Commission. Mr. Scott, will you please provide an overview of the 2 final plats for consideration tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 2 plats before you tonight for consideration. The first one is 5655 Broadmoor. The property is currently owned by CAPROCQ Mission LLC. I'm not going to pronounce that as one word. And they're addressed at 5700 Broadmoor Street. They're actually the owner of the Mission Tower office building, which is just across the street from this property. The owner acquired both properties a couple of years ago. They acquired the 5655 Broadmoor property as an off-site parking lot for the office building. And they did receive a special use permit last winter for that purpose. The property is just north of Broadmoor Park and east of the Mission Tower office building. The property is currently a surface parking lot and has been at least since the 1990s and not even before then. The owner of the building intends to utilize the parking lot for overflow office parking, as I said. And the owner is now seeking a plat to finalize the use of this property, in particular dedicated right-of-way on the property. The property will be platted as one lot with approximately 45,000 square feet. The plat will dedicate a 4-foot right-of-way along the eastern border, which is adjacent to Broadmoor, for the purpose of a sidewalk that will connect to the existing sidewalk in Broadmoor Park and a crosswalk across Broadmoor. The plat will be known as 5655 Broadmoor. There was a public hearing before the Planning Commission on June 25th, at which time the Planning Commission took public comments regarding the proposed plat. There were none. The Planning Commission subsequently approved the plat 7-0. And the applicant, Mr. Michael Osborne, Caw Valley Engineering, is present this evening to go into questions, particularly about the plat. So that's all I have for that particular item.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
Mayor, I move the city council uphold the recommendation of the planning commission and approve the proposed plat case number 18-04 and 5655 Broadmoor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call for a vote.
Flora.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Inman.
Aye.
Kring.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Schlesmacher.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Mayor, I move the city council up, oh, I'm sorry.
We're going to approve it, that's great. Move along here. The second plat is the second gateway plat. The property owner is RE Realty LLC, 140 Broadway, 41st floor, New York, New York. And the applicant is Mr. David Eichman of Olson Engineering, representing the owner, and he is present tonight if you have any questions. This property is located at 481 Johnson Drive, the southwest corner of Johnson Drive and Monroe. The property is the site of the proposed Gateway mixed-use development. As you all know, the proposed Gateway development is a mixed-use development consisting of 3 apartment buildings located at the corner of Johnson Drive and Roland Drive, a hotel, office building, and entertainment venue. Plans have been submitted and reviewed for the apartment buildings, which will be phase 1 of the development. The owner is now seeking to plat the property so as to subdivide it from 1 lot into 2 lots, one for the apartment building and the rest for future development. Lot 2 will be approximately 170,777 square feet and will be dedicated for the apartment buildings. Lot 3 will be 533,000 square feet and will be subdivided with future plattings for future development on this project. This plat will align the specific property for the apartment buildings and finalize all right-of-way dedications and easements, as well as correct and remove previous easement dedications that are no longer necessary. The plat will be known as the Gateway Second Plat. A public hearing was held before the Planning Commission on June 25th, at which time the Planning Commission took comments regarding the proposed plat. There was one individual who spoke to concerns about traffic on Roland Drive and ingress and egress into the site. The Planning Commission subsequently approved the plat 6-0 with 1 abstention. Since Mr. Eichmann is here, if you have any questions.
I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, this time I really would like to make a motion that the City Council uphold the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve the proposed plat case number 18-05, 4801 Johnson Drive, Gateway Second Plat.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Inman.
Aye.
Flora.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Kring.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Schlesmacher.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 7 is committee reports. Councilmember Schlesmacher, would you please provide a report on finance and administration?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one item tonight to present for our Finance and Administration Committee. It's item number 7A, a resolution of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, or IRBs, for Keith & Associates. Dr. Bill Keith of Keith & Associates, WAK Development LLC, recently purchased the building at 6299 Knoll, where their existing dental practice is located. WAK Development plans to undertake major renovations to the building, as well as expand their current dental practice. Dr. Keith has inquired about the city's willingness to consider issuing industrial revenue bonds for the project and has submitted the proper application. The IRBs would allow WAK Development to secure sales tax exemption on certain construction materials and supplies. The first step in the process is for the city to approve a resolution which establishes the intent and authority to issue the IRBs. The proposed resolution authorizes an issuance not to exceed $4 million. The actual bond issuance would occur at a later date, at which time the size of the issuance would be finalized. The bonds are not a general obligation of the city and are not backed by the full faith and credit of the city. Mayor, I move the City Council approve a resolution determining the intent of the City of Mission, Kansas to issue its industrial revenue bonds in an aggregate amount not to exceed $4 million to finance the costs of acquiring, constructing, and equipping a commercial facility for the benefit of WAK Development LLC and its successors, and assigns for sales tax exemption only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say I really appreciated the presentation by Dr. Keith at our committee meetings, and I thought it was really great to hear sort of a homegrown business success story.
Thank you very much.
And I think Dr. Keith brought Dr. Keith, the Dr. Keith that he
No,
was referring to last
He's
week.
really here.
Yes, last week he said, "I'm not Dr. Keith, that's my dad." I think it was a direct quote. Thank you for both.
But Dr. Donkey cannot leave the practice.
You can put that in the document.
Put that in there, that'll give me some job security.
Thank you all.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Flora.
Aye.
Inman.
Aye.
Kring.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Schlesmacher.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right.
That concludes our Finance and Administration report.
Thank you. Councilmember Inman.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor. There is nothing to report from the Community Development Committee.
All right, thank you. We move move on to item 8, unfinished business. We do not have any unfinished business this evening, so item 9 is new business, and we do not have any new business. So that brings us to item 10, which is comments from the City Council. This is an opportunity for any member of the council to make any kind of comments they would like. Ms. Graham.
Mrs. Inman and I will not be holding our normal Ward 3 meeting in July, which usually would occur tomorrow evening. We have several competing priorities. We have the Mission Market, which we will be attending, and we also have swim championships, which will take up all the parking in the city. So we will gladly revisit our Ward 3 constituents in October.
Thanks, Debbie.
And it's not just Mission Market tomorrow, it's Thursdays tomorrow as well.
Special.
And
Yes.
Ward 4, right, has a meeting and meet and greet on the 14th of August at 7 p.m. at Sylvester Coliseum.
All right. Anybody else? All right, so we will then move on to item 11, which is the mayor's report. I do not have a report, so item 12, city administrator's report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick items, and I might actually come up here, because I can't lean over the table that far. We've talked just briefly about the gateway tax bill that has been brought current. It's about $2.1 million total tax bill. As we look at that, $1.72 million is actually coming back to the city of Mission. As I mentioned, the contractor is on site exploring, doing some exploratory work on the piers. We've just talked about the tomorrow will be third Thursday at the market, starting at 4:30. It will be hot. That's been the one consistent, but we continue to have new vendors and people interested in the market each week. So we're throwing down the gauntlet and passing along the challenge. If our vendors don't mind the heat, then where are their customers? Let's get the customers out and help support them this week.
There will be plenty of beer and wine.
Yes. We would be looking, we put out a call recently for folks who would be interested in being appointed to vacant positions on our boards and commissions. We have several. The mayor and I are in the process of setting up some interviews, so if you have any other names you would like to pass along, particularly Ward 1 or Ward 2, we will get them slated in the interview process, and we'd like to be able to make the appointments in August if we can and get our boards and commissions back up to full speed and filling those vacancies. We're also currently accepting applications for the Citizens Academy that will start on August 2nd. Kevin Self, captain in the police department, can provide access to those applications. It's a 10-week program that's been very well received. Tennis court repairs have been completed, and the standards and the nets are back up, and we are currently in the process of soliciting quotes for resurfacing. So the tennis courts are getting a little bit of a makeover this summer, which is exciting. And then Mr. Arnett mentioned the Broadmoor project. We have been looking at some alternative designs and options based on the feedback that we had at our first series of public open house meetings. And I think we'll be prepared in the next week or two to present you with kind of our formalized timeline and our plan of action to get that back out in front of folks. So that's all I have this evening.
All right. Item 13 is executive session, which we do not have a need for this evening, so that brings us to adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Prior to that, I apologize. I wanted to tell Christy and her staff, and Public Works and Police, and everybody who provided staff assistance to the Mission Picnic. It was amazing. We had so many people there. Everybody who came was happy. It was like a small town done right. It was amazing, including the fire department. Police did great, but Christy's staff was amazing. Kathy Walker is there. If she was on her deathbed, she'd find a way to come out. So it was a great success. Thank you.
I will withdraw my motion. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.